Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Hey Joe Jordan Love, and here to bring you your AEW Dynamite review for October 28th, 2020. Was a very good show with some not so good spots, but overall, it was a pretty good show. We had semifinals of the AEW World Title Eliminator. Um, we had the town hall meeting between the Inner Circle and NJF. We had a sit down interview with the Young Bucks and FTR prior to their much anticipated title match at Full Gear. Uh, over all that and more on the podcast today. So thank you all for joining me. If you're new, like and subscribe. Click on that bell for notifications for your sports reviews, your predictions, as well as uh, pro wrestling reviews. Uh, so thank you all, and let's get into the podcast, shall we? So the show started off in good fashion. We had Wardlow versus Hangman and Page. The first semifinal uh, match in the tournament. Prior to the match, we had Dasha spoke with Wardlow and MJF. Uh, MJF said that if Wardlow is to win the tournament and win the world title, MJF would be the world champion because he's not contractually obligated to AEW. He's with MJF, so whatever his, or he said whatever mine is his, or vice versa. But yeah, so this match was kind of predictable. However, was a very good match between Wardlow and Hangman. Um, there were some spots exchanging back and forth. Hangman got off to a fast start. Um, at the beginning of the match, he was caught by Wardlow on the outside, but Hangman countered and sent him into the ring post on the outside. But then Wardlow followed back with a spear through the guardrail, which took Page out for a bit. Then he made the 10 count in time. Uh, then they were fighting on the outside again. Moonsault by Page to the outside. Then Page went for the buckshot Larry, but was countered by Wardlow to a close line of his own for a 2. Then Wardlow hit the F10, but Hangman rolled outside the ring. And then they were exchanging on the top rope, but Hangman hit a fallaway slam off the top rope to Wardlow, and then hit not one but 2 buckshot lariats on Wardlow for the win. Hangman advances to Full Gear as expected. This was a fun match. The right man won. Wardlow, he is improving. Out of AEW's big men, you can say Wardlow is the one on the rise, and Wardlow is getting better week by week. He's very agile for a big guy. Yeah, I mean, you got Wardlow, you got Lance Archer, you got Brian Cage, Will Hobbs. Wardlow seems to be the one right now with the most momentum. So we cut from that match to a promo of Jon Moxley. Looked like he just finished doing some MMA training, and he was sitting down. He talked about his journey so far as champion, and he described his match with Kingston as all being personal. That he will go into this match just like any other challenge, that he'll take Kingston's ego and break his spirit. So, of course, we go from that to. First of all, I want to say I love how AEW's progression as a story when it comes to a championship match, how you don't have to have these guys interact every week physically in order to make an interesting match. And Moxley is always a good promo. It just adds to this match. And Kingston afterwards had a match with Matt Sydal. This was a match I was looking forward to. Matt Sydal, he said in his interview with Chris Van Fleet that he's not contractually obligated to anywhere. How he's just doing his thing, which you love. Of course, Matt Sydal, he's been featured on Dark past few weeks. He was also on Late Night Dynamite against Shawn Spears, but of course there's also a history here because Kingston and Sydal, of course, were two of the last three in the Casino Battle Royal at All Out, along with Lance Archer. So a little bit his, but first Kingston came out. He talked about how Matt Sydal was a joker and how dare Jon Moxley, our champion, not show up here. And he had the cameraman go out of the ring. He said, "You haven't been here, you haven't trained here, so get out of my world." So you love the realness of A. Kingston. That's what makes him better. He's just a tough, pretty much a tough jackass New Yorker, pretty much to say, I would say. But that's what you love about him. So then Matt Sydal came out. It was a short but interesting match. Sydal, he was getting his offense in, got some kicks, reeled Kingston for a bit. Kingston, he countered one of Sydal's kicks with a powerbomb-like maneuver and an elbow drop. And then Sydal, he hit a Meteora for a 2 off the top rope. And then to finish the match, Kingston, he hit his signature spinning back fist, dropped Sydal, then used Moxley's Bulldog choke, which we've seen Moxley finish many people with. Sydal tapped out, but Kingston wasn't done. So then because Butcher, Blade, and the Bunny were out with Kingston, and the Bunny had a microphone, and then while the Bulldog choke was still applied, Kingston said, "Moxley, say I quit." And then Seidel said to the microphone, "I quit." So then Kingston let go of the whole "excuse me," but JR said on commentary this was basically a symbol of what's to come at Full Gear. And Kingston said afterwards, "I'm sorry, Mox. Should be fun at Full Gear. I just can't wait to see this match between Kingston and Moxley. Should be fun." So next we had the sit-down interview between the Young Bucks and FTR. FTR were in one room with Tully Blanchard. Young Bucks were in another room with Excalibur. Most of the questions were for the Young Bucks. The Bucks said that Matt Jackson's injury won't affect him and that they'll still be going into Full Gear. FTR was asked about causing the injury to Matt Jackson. FTR basically said that the tag titles, while this is a dream match, are much above this match between them and the Young Bucks. So after a while, the FTR left with Tully, and then the Young Bucks said that they had a stipulation going into this match. They said that if they don't win, they will never challenge for tag titles again. I mean, first of all, that's different because last year, Cody, he had that stipulation going into his match with Jericho, and Cody lost, but there's a growing consensus that Cody will get to challenge for the AEW World Championship again. Young Bucks, see, this shows their selflessness. I mean, if that tag division is so deep and this match has been so anticipated for the last 6 years, this just adds another element. Now, I do see the Young Bucks winning this match. I just don't see the Bucks losing. If the feud is continuing, however, I can see FTR winning and then maybe the Young Bucks find a way to lift the stipulation. But I do feel that at the end, the Bucks will win the tag titles, whether it's half Full Gear, we'll see. But it's definitely another cherry on top of this much anticipated matchup. So we go from that to the town hall meeting between the Inner Circle and MJF. So there was a table set on the stage area. Tony Schiavone and Dasha where they're basically moderating the inner circle, and then MJF came out. They were both sitting on opposite sides in the ring, and then the wrestlers, various wrestlers in AEW were lined up to ask questions. So first off, we had Luchasaurus ask a question to MJF. He talked about how he has a master's degree and MJF doesn't. And so Luchasaurus asks, what will MJF do financially for the inner circle? So there was a graph on the Titantron displayed on the screen, and it showed a line, the inner circle's progress. It was like going up and down, and then it was basically inner circle without MJF and what it would be like with MJF, and it just showed the line an upward slope continuously. So MJF talked about that. And then next, Reba and Britt Baker next were up, and Reba was praising Chris Jericho. Said he had a great smile. While Britt Baker was trying to ask a question, she said that it doesn't take much to see, even though she's a dentist, to see that MJF's track record based on friendships in AEW is not good. So how would the inner circle prepare for that? So Jericho talked about how they're not Cody, basically, and how, yes, MJF's track record, but there are better friendships, and MJF talked about how his offer of friendship would be better. So then we go to the Librarian, Peter Avalon. This was short and simple. This had nothing to do with MJF. This was basically just Avalon just asked the inner circle. Well, also to mention, Jake Hager was there because he's training for a Bellator fight in the future. But Avalon just plainly asked, can he join the inner circle? And the inner circle just laughed it off and said, no chance in hell. No chance. So that was funny. And then last but not least, Eric Bischoff. Once again back in AEW. He had a 3-part question. He talked about JF Kennedy's speech. Asked not what can you do for a country, or asked not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And then he asked MJF, what can you do for the inner circle? And MJF praised his question, and then said, one word he can do for the inner circle, friendship. And then constant boos from the AEW crowd, the AEW wrestlers that were on ringside. And then the second part, he asks Jericho, or no, sorry, he asks MJF, what can the Inner Circle do for him? And he talked about how he lacks one thing in AEW, friendship, again. So, and this all played in the fact that MJF is basically going to use the Inner Circle, I bet, to get what he wants. And ultimately what he wants is the AEW World title. So, well, that wasn't said, but I'm just saying. So then the third part of, or the last part of Eric Bischoff's question, he asked, now, as you know, I've worked with many years with Chris Jericho, and that he shows some prima donna aspects. So then Jericho was complaining, and Jericho was complaining to Tony Schiavone, and he was interrupting, and then Tony Schiavone told Chris Jericho to shut up. If you have watched the election, you'll know that was kind of funny. I will say that. But, yeah, so back to the question. Eric Bischoff said that, told MJF, you can kind of share some of those prima donna qualities. And he asked MJF, how do they know they won't come to blows or they won't turn on each other? So MJF asked Jericho, what haven't I done? I've shown you gifts, I've shown you friendship, I've shown you this, I've shown you that, I've given you the best segment that you've done in your career, and given the best segment in pro wrestling. And he asked, what haven't I done? And Chris Jericho said, you haven't beaten me. So then the challenge was laid out. The ultimatum was laid out. Chris Jericho said, me versus you at Full Gear. If you win, I'll let you join the Inner Circle. And MJF just plainly said, I'll do anything, and I mean anything, to beat you, because this is the most important match of my career. So then Santana interrupted, Ortiz interrupted, and he said that Sammy Guevara and him don't like him and don't want him to be a part of the Inner Circle, and says that he's no chance to get with him. So he said him and Sammy versus MJF and Wardlow next week, and they will be sure that MJF does not make it to Full Gear. So, interesting dynamic for next week. MJF and Ortiz versus Wardlow and MJF next week. But the big aspect, MJF versus Chris Jericho. Very, very interesting. It's basically like past versus present, future or present versus future. And I cannot wait to see how this match is going to unfold. But Full Gear is looking really good. The layout of it is just, geez, oh Louise, cannot come up with a better card. I would say than that. So next we had a little vignette. Was Team Taz growing impatient with Will Hobbs, saying, "Time's almost up. He has to make his decision. Is he with Team Taz or not?" So that was short and sweet. Next, we had a Lumberjack match for the TNT Championship. Cody versus Orange Cassidy. This was, some aspects of it were good, some were iffy. This match, if you compare it to their previous match 2 weeks ago, wasn't as entertaining. It was okay, but the match underwhelmed. It's kind of confusing where they're going with Orange Cassidy, I will say. But some aspects were okay. So one spot, Cody, he fell down from the apron onto the Lumberjacks, into the hands of the best friends, and the best friends just let him drop to the outside. Best friends are with Orange Cassidy, so that was interesting. Orange Cassidy, he had tilt-a-whirl DT for 2. Cody, he hit a superplex onto all the Lumberjacks on the outside, because of course with a Lumberjack match you need a big spot, including the Lumberjacks. It's kind of odd, but it always happens. So then they get back in the ring. Orange Cassidy, he hit a stunner, a diving DT, and then the beach break only for a 2 count. That is just so then Dark Order members, John Silver's, Alex Reynolds, they interfered. Silver's, he hit a boot to Orange Cassidy behind the referee's back. Arn Anderson took a shot at Orange Cassidy, all behind the referee's back. And then Cody follows up with a crossroads for the win. And it was underwhelming, to say the least. And so we got Cody versus Daria Allen, kind of as expected, for the TNT title at Full Gear. Should be interesting. But Orange Cassidy is on the buy-in to face John Silver's. Not much to say. That is just head scratching. Yeah. Unsure where their direction is with Orange Cassidy, but oh well. So after match, best friends were going to the backstage area, and they were attacked by Miro and Kip Sabian. Basically, them saying that they have not forgotten about what happened to the arcade setup, and they're in to make them pay. Do we get a match, tag team match between these four at Full Gear? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they'll put it on the buy-in. I'm just not too sure. But next week we got Miro versus Trent. Should be interesting. So next we had an NWA Women's Championship match between Serena Deeb and versus Layla Hirsch. Now, they documented it that last night in a match between Layla Hirsch and Thunder Rosa between Serena Deeb and Thunder Rosa, that Serena Deeb beat Thunder Rosa for the NWA Women's Championship. Now, Thunder Rosa, she hasn't been on AEW in a month, and there's been growing speculation that she is on her way to WWE. Now, it is confusing as to why Thunder Rosa is not sticking with AEW, because AEW needs women's wrestlers in a bad way. That division is their Achilles heel. And Thunder Rosa, look, the NXT women's division is flourished with talent. I mean, Toni Storm, Candice LeRae, Io Shirai, Dakota Kai, Rhea Ripley, Ember Moon. You got so much talent in that women's division. However, when it comes to WWE main roster, they are silly, and they are the WWE main roster women's division is terrible, because they have their favorites, and if you're not a certain few, just ask. If you're not Charlotte, then you're not going to get anywhere on the WWE's main roster. So that's terrible. I wonder why Thunder Rosa chose WWE, because I'm guessing she had to know that if you're going to the main roster, that the way she is, she is not going to be pushed prominently, because they have so much talented women, but if you don't fly under a certain look or a certain favoritism, that you're not going far. So, but that NXT women's division has a lot to be desired. So, I mean, I wonder what was her mindset, but we'll see as the story develops. So this match was short. Leo Hirsch, they talked about how she used to be an amateur wrestler and that she had one match with Kawashita and she took her to the limit. I'm not sure if I saw that match. Maybe it was on Dark. I watched some Dark, not much of Dark. Luckily, now that my YouTube is now better with my TV, so maybe I'll be back to watching Dark more prominently, but we'll see. But Serena Deep, she won with a neck breaker and then a arm caught half crab. Hirsch tapped out. This short is what it is, I guess. So, next we had Shawn Spears. First time in a while Shawn Spears has been in a match on Dynamite. He faced off against VSK. VSK, he's been on Dark. Yes, of course. But this was short. C4 Death Out Driver by Spears for the win. Afterwards, he was being belted by Candy, thrown by a guy in a moose costume in the audience. And you can kind of tell because, well, Shawn Spears in a feud with Scorpio Sky. Spears took this guy out of the audience, threw him in the ring. Spears asked Tully for that steel kind of spike or whatever you want to call it that he puts in his glove. So Sky took the moose mask off and revealed himself and hit Spears with the TKO. Stood tall over Spears. And we're getting this match next week. Spears versus Scorpio Sky. Should be interesting. They're kind of building up the Golem show in an interesting fashion, which you like. Because usually the Golem show or the Fall show to a pay-per-view is kind of but the Golem show is being built up as interesting, which you like to see. Then we get to the main event, Kenny Omega versus Penta Zero, aka Pentagon Jr. They talked about how Ray Phoenix, he forfeited his spot to his brother because precautions due to a concussion suffered in Phoenix's match with his brother last week. Instead, this was a fun match, rematch of their outing at All In 2 years ago. So this was a fun match. Kenny Omega, the cleaner is coming back little by little. Those same models that were there for his match last week in his entrance were there again, and they wore masks that the Lucha Brothers were gonna wear. So kind of symbolism. But Kenny Omega, he had the long introduction again by Justin Roberts. He came out. It was cool because he was kind of mocking Pentagon and gloating. He was wearing the AAA world title that he won from Phoenix, and he was kind of pushing the buttons of Phoenix as well, who is at ringside. But nonetheless, this was fun. They exchanged chops with Penta. They're not Walter's chops, but they are sick, and they would hurt a lot. They're not as explosive as Walter's, but still, I would not want to take them. So Penta, he had a tailbake on Hero and leading up to break, and then Omega, he had Hurricanrana, Rise of the Terminator, and then tailbake on Hero as well. Then crossbody off the top by Penta, then sling blade off the middle rope for near fall. Was a diving foot stomp to the chest and the face of Omega by Penta for a near fall as well. Then Omega, he hit a powerbomb V-trigger knee for a close to. Then a destroyer by Pentagon. They were on the top rope exchanging. Pentagon, he hit a destroyer on Kenny on the rampway. Then he hit a package pile driver for a close to. And then Pentagon, he hit a super kick, went for the springboard. He was caught by a knee strike. Then the one wing angel by Omega for the win. As expected, we're going to get Kenny Omega versus Hangman on Page. Former partners, now opponents, adversaries at Full Gear. Should be fun. Should be interesting. Of course, I'm predicting that Moxley retains at Full Gear. Then Kenny Omega beats Hangman. Then we get Moxley versus Kenny Omega again. Kenny Omega beats Moxley, and then Kenny Omega is the new world champion. And 2021 will be about Kenny Omega. For those who have been complaining about Kenny Omega, 2021 will be the year of the cleaner. So, and that's the end of the show. So, interesting lineup for next week, the Golem Show. We get Moxley, Kingston face to face. We have the tag team match between MJF, Wardlow versus Ortiz and Sammy Guevara. We have Miro versus Trent. Some interesting matchups to look forward to next week. Also Sean Spears versus Scorpio Sky. Should be fun. But again, thank you all for joining me. I'll see you back on Thursday with sports overview topics. Again, thank you all. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you all on Tuesday.